Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Fireside Chat. This is our Fireside Chat 54. So, if you are new to this channel, you're new to these Fireside Chats, just a reminder, we are the founders of, myself and Mash are the founders of Codurance. José is our managing director for Codurance Spain. And we used to have those chats, just the three of us, after working hours, having a drink and talking about what's happening in the industry, talking about software craftsmanship and many other things. And we always enjoyed those chats, and we found that maybe it would be useful if we started recording them. So we started recording them a while back. For our surprise, people seems to like it, and then we decided to keep going. So if you are new to this channel, so don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up so we are notified. We are normally live every Tuesday night. So that's how it starts. Normally we don't plan much. We just pick a topic and we just come in and discuss that topic. So a lot of opinions that we have we are formulating as we discussed. So don't expect anything fully formed. So for people on LinkedIn, if you'd like to join the discussion, on YouTube, we have the live chat. So it's much easier for us to talk to you if you're coming through the YouTube link. But everyone is very welcome. So the topic that we picked for today is software engineering and craftsmanship. What's the fuss? The inspiration for this talk, for this chat, was a talk that Dave Farley gave recently. It seems that it's a no talk, but he gave it a new version of it last year that talks about taking back software engineering, and that software craftsmanship is not sufficient. And we watched the talk, and we felt that it was like a quite well balanced. The title is very clickbaity, right? So I think that he tried to create a dichotomy in there. But during the talk, we felt that he was quite respectful, at least in this version of the talk. I don't know the previous ones, to craftsmanship. But then we would like to talk about, like, is this a dichotomy? Like, do we need a new term, or is which term is correct? Is it even important for us to talk about that? And so yeah, guys, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so I can. So initially, when it's craftsmanship insufficient, I think a while back I did actually saw another one that was a bit more critical of at least how Dave saw his own, how he prescribed to that mindset and so on. But that was a while back, but this particular one, as you said, there's not a lot of mention of craftsmanship in itself. It There's only a small one, but kind of saying that it's insufficient and we should talk more about engineering and so on. So my personal take is that I I don't think software craftsmanship in any way, if it excludes other ways and perspectives on what software development is. You got software development, you got software engineering, you got software craftsmanship. People even talk about software, as a, gardening and research discipline and science discipline and so on. And as far as I'm concerned, they are different perspectives, and they all bring something to this. As certain perspectives, individuals prescribe more to, they resonates more to them, and it helps them think about what they do in a way that actually resonates with them, and so they would identify themselves as that title or as that perspective. But that doesn't invalidate any other perspective, right? And what I felt, I mean, probably don't want to talk a lot about the Dave Farley's talk, but the nuance that he actually goes into, in like one of the things that he says is that there are many types of software engineering. Then there are many types of engineering. Well, there are many types of craftsmanship as well. And uh, the nuance with which he treats engineering, we also treat craftsmanship in very much the same nuances. And a lot of the things that he talks about, of course, there are elements that he talks about engineering that are not in the craft discipline, but there are a lot of things that he talks about that are. Even the things like he will talk about incremental and uh,
Iterative.
iterative and incremental. Of course, in craft as well, you have the iterative and the incremental. Craft actually puts a lot more focus on personal skill, professional development, professional mindset, and so on, which you can say that engineering does as well. And many people, in fact, some of the most well-regarded uh, kind of social commentary and people like Richard Sennett and so on, who wrote the book The Craftsman, by the way, he actually refers to sees even engineering through the prism or through the perspective of craft. It's not the only perspective, but there are many perspectives to it. So I personally think that the whole idea or the creating this dichotomy is not actually helpful. It's fine to say that there is one thing and you look at these things and it gives you this kind of value, and then we look at it from this point and it gives us this other value as well as a lot of overlap and so on. And I think that's a much better uh, conversation than to kind of discard one for the other to create these dichotomies, although they probably create more clicks and I don't know, have bigger attendance to talks and so on. And so it's not as good in terms of marketing, but it's more fair, I would say.
What do you think, Jose?
I agree with what Matt said. I think he also mentions a couple of things, right? Like he mentions economies of scale, no, and repeatability and all this stuff, but then immediately goes into we don't build the same software every time and so on and so forth, right? So my takeaway from that talk is if you want to build software, let's say effectively, independently of how you choose to call yourself or what kind of paradigm do you subscribe to, no, you should look at building things incrementally, feedbacks, etc., right? Like kind of like the what he proposes, no, that you should be looking at. And I think there is value in all of those things. But I do believe that he poses a question at some point, something along the lines of, if you have an iPhone, now would you like to have like a craft iPhone or a mass-produced iPhone, right? And and he answers, it's a bit of a rhetorical. He answered, no, you want the mass-produced one. Well, do I?
No,
If
yeah,
I
he
could,
No,
mentioned
if
he
no,
I
no.
could
mentioned
have
I
a
he
think
phone that
mentioned
is made
he said,
specifically for me and my context and what I do,
no, yeah, he
would I
said
want
you
to?
wanted the well engineered one, not
no,
the
no,
Well,
well
well
engineered.
well,
crafted.
but he was
Yeah.
talking about mass production and that like
Yeah.
treating it as a
No,
production chain kind of,
sorry,
no.
Jose. I think I'll have to disagree a bit there because in that particular case, he talks about, yeah, he says you want a crafted one or an engineered one, and that's just a loaded terms. But actually, what he means, and at that time, I thought no, like software development is not mass production because I thought it at that time. But later on, he does say that is talking about the design, like engineering, design engineering, and not production engineering.
And non-production,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
Okay,
he mentions it in
but
the context of the
this
iPhone
is
as well.
yes, but that's also kind of a fallacy because you don't just build ideas and they magically appear. You know what I mean? Like you design and then you need to put it to work. A lot of things look good on paper, and when you actually sit down and do them, they're not that great, or the execution is bad, right? So I still feel like that's kind of like a trick kind of question. And to the other aspect of whether you have things in engineering that you don't have in craftsmanship and so on, I think the whole idea of craftsmanship came to supplement software engineering as we knew it at the moment, right? Like precisely some of these ideas from economies of scale where people lose perspective of the whole, right? Or that systemic kind of view, I think is one of those concepts that craftsmanship have tried to bring back, no, into the practice, that understanding from beginning to end of the whole software making process independently of what it is that you're building, no. And that sense not only of you said it before, like the skill building and the professional, that's there. But it's also about understanding how everything fits together, and taking ownership of the outcome as a whole. And those things are still, missing. They're not taught in university. When you go and study software engineer, you study a lot of the design that he mentioned, right? You study a lot of the technologies and some of the specific problems that you may need to solve and so on, and the solutions to those. But that aspect is still lacking, right? So again, I don't necessarily, I think it's quite clickbaity. It was meant to be polarizing, so to speak, without actually going into it, right? Like, it was just in the title, and then we all agree with the things that he said. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, you should. Yes, of course. No, you should. Yes, of course you should do that. No, but it's still kind of artificially, from my perspective, artificially inflated, no,
Constructed,
or
maybe.
constructed, that the conflict, so to speak. No?
Yeah. So just before I go, like, there is like there are a few people in on LinkedIn. I can see Kieran. Hi, Kieran. Hi, Mariusz. So it's easier for us to interact with you, at least on our chat, if you come to our live chat on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Codurance, you see the live video in there, and it will be easier for us sometimes. We can address your questions verbally, but we can also write it, some answers there as well. So if you want to jump, it would be great. So as you said, like, I think that the talk itself, if he had just removed the title, because what happened for people watching us, like, most of you know, like, we are very into software craftsmanship and stuff. So as soon as the talk went out, we had quite a lot of people from outside our company and inside our company sending links to us. Hey, have you seen these? And so on. What do you think? And that's why we decided to discuss this. And there is an element. To be fair, I'm a bit tired of all these discussions, to be fair. So because, like, we've been discussing that for so long, right? So I think that what people need to remember is that the software craftsmanship emerged for a reason, right? So there is a software craftsmanship movement and the mindset, and we need to remember the history, so for us to have a better discussion, right? So the software craftsmanship came as a reaction to where Agile was going. Agile was going in a direction that is focused on process, left the engineering behind, mainly the extreme programming, and that triggered the software craftsmanship movement. And the software craftsmanship movement, what added to the engineering practices, the focus on quality and so on, was the professionalism. And that's where the mindset came in, right? The mindset of being a software craftsperson. So then it really depends. When you try to create those dichotomies, we need to understand, is it really a dichotomy or is it a false dichotomy? Because, like, when you talk about software craftsmanship, for me, it's almost like talking about Agile. Agile is not Scrum. Software craftsmanship is not clean code or extreme programming or TDD. Those things are very different. Are we talking about a specific methodology? Are we talking about a specific practice? Are we talking about a mindset, a movement? What are we referring to when we say software craftsmanship? And even the software engineering, I think that resonates something that you were saying, Jose. Like, when that term was coined, probably in the 1968 in the NATO conference, although some people said it was even before, the thinking of software engineering and that focus on engineering is what led to waterfall later on as well, to that very strict process, mass production and stuff like that. And I agree with what Jose was saying, that the software craftsmanship, say, like, we are building bespoke thing. We're not just creating mass production stuff. And the craftsmanship brought that bespoke element. And so I think that although I like the talk, I don't think that he was disrespectful by any stretch of imagination. I just felt that those things are not in
conflict.
Not in conflict at all.
Yeah. I think it'll be good for us to go a bit more into, because a lot of the time people find, especially people who are not familiar with or intimately familiar with what the craftsmanship, especially the mindset, is about. And by the way, like, history is important to understand where you come from and everything else, but for us, the the true value of software craftsmanship is the mindset,
Yeah.
right? And I think it'll be good for us to go a bit more into it. And the other side is that it is a lot of the times, like, we'd refer to us as software craftspeople and so on, and some people would say, well, it's an elitist thing, or there are a lot of straw man arguments or certain simplifications about what the movement was about and also what the mindset is about. And a lot of the people think that it is a elitist thing. Well, far from it, actually. For us, at least in the UK, and we've been with that movement for the past 14 years, and helping create communities and so on. It's about learning, it's about community, it's about having a professional mindset, it's about, as Jose was talking about, creating that holistic view of software. A lot of time people think, oh, it's just about code and you're just kind of peering about quality code. It could not be more wrong. It's about this holistic idea. It's about understanding the value behind it. It's about seeing all the different roles in creation of software and respecting all of them as equal parts of a whole. And that's why we align so well with things like XP and so on, because it talks about the whole team, talks about great values and principles, talks about respect. These are the things that we talk about. And these whole kind of things around, because we say that software is a craft, that is no longer, we saying that it's not engineering. No, we don't. In fact, seeing things from one perspective does not negate other perspectives. This is not a religion.
Yeah. I think that this is a cool thing for people to understand, because like um, the mindset is quite encompasses a lot of things, right? So there is a big element on the craft. There is that was in the name, and that was an element of doing things well. But doing things well uh, doesn't mean just to work on keep polishing the name of a variable or a small method. So the software craftsmanship in like is like, we want well crafted software. It's not about a unit test or just the small thing. Is well crafted software as a whole, is the whole thing, thinking all the different aspects. But there are far more to that, as Mesh was saying. That is the community aspect and the learning. It's part of the initial ideas. People might like or might not like the manifesto, but it gives us at least a direction. For example, a great part was community of professionals, was creating that community of professionals that we learn from each other, we share ideas, we try not to repeat the same mistakes, we prepare the next generation moving forward. So there is the steadily adding value. It's part of the manifesto. That is like for us to say, look, we should always be adding. So that in it's in there, like about the incremental, iterative, always adding value to who? To whoever is paying, to our clients. So that is the element of professionalism, to continuously adding value, right? So those things they were always at the core. And even when we look at the elements that he mentioned during the talk to define the principles from the engineering, all of them are applicable. All of them, right? So when he said iterative, incremental, feedback, what else I had noted here? Iterative, feedback, incremental, experimental, and empirical, right? So the empirical is the one that you might say, you know what, we talk far more that in proper engineering than in craftsmanship itself, but that doesn't exclude, right? So that I could say, like, okay, it was not part of the main focus. But this is the thing for me, like that's the mindset. It's not in conflict of, as Mesh said, like of all those different views and perspectives that are also quite important. What else? Do we have any questions? So let me see what we have in there. Herman says, you guys have done an immense work of love by sharing and living the craftsmanship mindset for all those years. You don't see the same in other communities. Thank you, Herman. Yeah, so I think that not only us, but you as well, in Chile and many others, right? So there are communities around the world talking about craftsmanship, and I agree. Like, I think that the software craftsmanship community has been so inclusive and embracing anyone. If you are like in tech, if you are involved with software, everyone have always been very welcome in the community. It's a community that is very open, right? So to all kinds. So is there anything else? Sometimes I feel like we're sharing a lot, but impacting a few people in our industry. So there is Kevin said that sometimes I feel like we are sharing a lot, but impacting a few people in our industry. So, like, I would not be disheartened by that, because like having an impact doesn't mean like it's very difficult to measure the impact that you have. Yeah. And I think that the Pareto's law, the 80-20, this is something that I had to learn the hard way. I felt at some point I was much younger, far more idealistic, and wanted to change the world, of that kind of stuff. And you feel that everyone needs to change. Everyone needs to see the world from your perspective. But if you are able just to change yourself and a few people around you, it's good enough. So there is a small core that probably will evolve the industry. You don't need the whole industry. You just need to share that message across a few people and be happy with it. Like, be happy to make a local impact. I think that's probably what
and these things, it's not like, and I think this is another aspect. Maybe we, speaking to that, is that sometimes we think that the perspective we have, or the community that we have, you think, you enjoy it, you get a lot of value from it and everything, and you think, well, maybe why do other people not have it, and maybe it's the right thing for everybody. It's not. It's not the right. Everyone has their own communities. Everyone, certain things resonate more. In fact, even the software craftsmanship community, for London software craftsmanship community, came out of the London Java community.
Yeah.
And again, the reason it came out of the Java community, I think, Sandro, I mean, I'm telling your story, but it's you went to said, can we run some sessions in the Java community about language agnostic and bringing people in, and more about the mindset and so on. And he said, well, it doesn't fit with the Java thing, but will really help you, and let's kind of spin out your another community, and so that for the people that it is important, they will join it. And I think this is the whole part of it. It doesn't have to. It's not the only way that we are improving and raising the bar of the software industry. It's one of the ways. It doesn't negate all the other ways, and the way that people are coming together and helping each other, and the open source movement and all those kind of things. They're all, in their own way, raising the bar. And this is just one other way. So it doesn't have to be like, everyone needs to be part of this because we like it so much and we think it's so much value. Yes, of course, for you and for people around you. But for other people, they have other outlets as well. And I think we should accept that.
So there is Jose, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Or...
No, I think again it's a matter of different perspectives. No, it's like it's what you're saying. I think in our for instance in Spain, the software craftsmanship community came from the agile community, right? So it's also it was also kind of trying to complement something there, right? And yeah, overall it's more of a, if it fits, no, it's if it's the right tool or the right mindset, no, for what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve things, go ahead and do it, right? That's kind of the...
And it's funny because like in the software craftsmanship communities, the things that we discussed very often were like, you could call it some engineering practices, like we were talking about how to measure certain things, how to automate certain things, how to increase the performance of certain things, how to make something more stable. So we were not only like, I think that there is a misconception to think that the only things that were discussed in a craftsmanship community were unit testing and TDD and clean code. Of course, we do a lot of katas because we love coding. Like we are developers. Like one of the key things that we do is to write code. And when we are among friends uh, in the craftsmanship community, so having writing code with each other is a lot of fun. But I think that sometimes there is a vision that is a bit short-sighted to everything that happens within the software craftsmanship community, right? So as Mesh said, like the craftsmanship community attracted developers and people related to software from all communities. Like Jose mentioned, the Agile, the Java, Clojure, and DevOps, everyone, like from cloud. So a lot of the members of the craftsmanship community are also members of other communities, and all those topics, they end up. The craftsmanship becomes a very generic meeting in a way, which is always we have a lot of different topics, which is really cool.
In fact, I remember, both in the Socrates conferences in the UK, and many that we attended and helped run some even in the rest of Europe as well, the communities themselves. I would say that often we didn't talk about code. In fact, more often we didn't talk about code, or we talked about things like, we used to run these katas which were related to extreme startup. Remember, that was actually helping you understand how you evolve and the practices. And a lot of these were the kind of the continuous delivery practices that you would then would use to help you with these kind of things. We talk about things like imposter syndrome. We talk about mentorship. We talk about how to, the values, how to be respectful to other developers, how to run, how to be a good member of a team, how to have these different roles that are, inherently have been a bit more difficult, things like, UX and product development and product management and so on. How do we integrate all that in more effective way? So the conversations were broad and all related to software, but not everything is about code.
There's another aspect of that you mentioned before, which is the elitism, no, and how it's been tagged as no, and and I think a bit of that comes from well crafted software, no. So depending on what criteria you're using, and then if it's not well crafted, does it mean that it's poorly crafted? No, and there's this aspect of if you're not, no, just to kind of go to it, if you're not doing TDD and you're not doing this and that, then it's you're doing it wrong, right? Like that's and there's definitely people who are who think like that, but the thing is, it happens as well in any field, like even in regular software engineering. No, there are lots of people that think like that as well.
Exactly. And people get the wrong message, isn't it? I mean, and they, with Agile as well, right? And Scrum and so on. There's a lot of people, they're doing Agile, right? That says it all. But again, just because the way that people apply it or so on, and certain groups even may see it differently, that does not, there is nuance, there's evolution. There people see these things differently. Different aspects of it resonate. Again, going back to, there are many kinds of engineering, there are many kinds of craftsmanship, there are many variations of the mindset as well. It's, as with all of these things, when it becomes popular, when a lot of people take it on and so on, not all the messages are as intended. And I think this whole you are right. There are people that would have a kind of a bit of an elitist idea, like, I'm a craftsperson, like, I do write well crafted code. But then when you actually really speak to them, there's a lot of values that we all cherish, like pragmatism and professionalism and so on. They
it's
don't.
it's funny when you said no, I write really good software or whatever, right? And then they're not able to ship anything. They're not able to, and I'm like, but maybe you got it, you got it wrong.
Exactly.
No?
Exactly. It's like, when like Agile's first days and so on, I remember going to a new team and someone saying to me, "Where did you learn your Scrum?" Who taught? It's like, my Scrum is better than your Scrum. It's the same thing. It's the
I
same
was
thing.
just like I was just like trying to send some messages on LinkedIn, because I know that there are people on LinkedIn now interacting with us. Just just sent them the link to join us on YouTube. It's a bit easier for us to keep track of the conversation and reply in a single channel. We cannot reply on LinkedIn through the software that we are using to record this live. Yeah, so that's why I'm asking people to join the YouTube live channel. Um, so what about the? Although we already talked about that, but I remember those other metaphors as well. I think that I got so bored of all those things. Like in a way, I like the idea. The engineering is probably the one that I use the most, besides craftsmanship. Yeah, but there were many other ones, because then I remember a point where everyone at some point decided to create their own metaphor. And then there was art and gardening, even like, for example, some critics of craftsmanship start creating, like they went there, criticized craftsmanship a lot, wrote a completely stupid blog post misinterpreting everything we were doing, and then gave metaphors like surgeon. Oh, so I think that there are certain things like, although I like that they're having different perspectives and metaphors, I think that what is important for everyone to understand is that metaphors cannot be stretched too far. And so at some point they will break, including the software engineering, right? So although, like, for example, when we see things as a mindset, as Mash was saying, it's a bit different, because now we are not trying to use a metaphor to talk about a process or what we want to do. It's just like a mindset that you take for your life, for your career.
A guiding ideology of how
Exactly.
you deal with the context of building software, your profession, and so on and so forth, right? It's kind of like a philosophy, and you have some tenets, some principles, no, and then you apply it.
A
And some
philosophy
people
is a,
that
is a
and
good,
some people
yeah.
decide to use XP, and some people decide to use something else. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it
A
and it
philosophy.
itself evolves as well, right? It in itself evolves. Like, it's not one thing. It's not like, oh, previously this is how someone said it like this. No, it actually opens. A metaphor is a very fixed thing, because you are actually taking something that already exists, you're taking as it is and seeing how it applies. There's no real. It allows you to see. It's a tool for thinking and seeing things, but it doesn't allow you to evolve. Evolve. The metaphor itself does not evolve, but a mindset can evolve. How your perspective can evolve. So when a metaphor fails, then you throw, well, you discard the metaphor in that aspects, because it's failing there. Whereas a mindset, it can evolve, it can go. So there are two separate things. Often, I think this is often another thing that people talk about craftsmanship as a metaphor, right? And yes, there is value in seeing craft as a metaphor. And then a lot of people see, when they then say craft, they talk about almost handicrafts, making the violin or making the table and so on. And yes, those things can be, the making of a violin or the making of a table and so on can be applied as metaphors onto software development. And you can get a lot of mileage out of it and a lot of thinking and insights out of it. But that does not mean that it's only a metaphor. Software can be viewed in itself as a craft. And then it is a craft, just like other crafts, has its own principle, its own ways of working, borrows from certain aspects and disciplines from history, but also evolves them like all the other crafts have, and has its own identity as a craft as well, if you choose to see it that way.
You
Yeah.
know, talking about the metaphor, there's another aspect that also is used to be an essential part, I would say, of the movement. The whole idea of, you know, the craft person, that going from apprentice to journeyman to master, that kind of thing, and the way to learn, no, which I think was also trying to plug some holes that we have in education today and how we teach this stuff in universities and schools. And I think that, especially now with so much demand and so many boot camps and different, you know, types of educational institutions trying to churn out developers, no, to support the demand, that has switched a bit, right? Where the focus, instead of going into the theory and in, you know, the theory with some application and so on, has gone into how can I get this person to perform in the context of an organization that is building software as fast as possible, right? So to some extent, there were aspects of that have been assimilated into how the industry has responded to dealing with that demand. Yeah, I'm not saying is the solution, because I don't think so. Yeah, like in fact, they've accelerated that so much that then you miss out on some important aspect. No? So you get people who maybe know the specific technology or know, but they're lacking some foundational concepts, right? That basically they struggle. They cannot build good software because they have not achieved that foundational knowledge, right? Which you got from going to university, or from maybe you go from going to university, right? But I think that's also something that um, that the movement itself brought on, no, to some extent, and tried to incorporate into how people learn to develop software by doing it, no, by actually, and learning from other people, not just learning in a classroom setting. Someone gives a master class or whatever. That pairing and elbow to elbow kind of thing, no.
Mhm.
But there are a few things that I find that is very important. A few years ago, I started talking more about that, but then COVID came in, and then of course, like we reduced the number of presentations and community events and stuff. So, but like one thing that I started talking about, which probably is not going to be very popular, even like from some comments that we have on the live chat right now. But I think that is very important for everyone in the software craftsmanship movement, and hopefully outside, to understand. Software craftsmanship is not extreme programming, and that distinction needs to be very clear to everyone, right? So there is for me, like, we need to separate the two. And the reason I always say that, because the software craftsmanship as a mindset is always trying to strive to do the best you can within the context you have, right? So I think this is another thing that is important for everyone always to remember. You always need to take into account the context that you have, the constraints that you have, and try to do the best you can within the things that you can actually, within the things that you cannot change, right? So the things that you can change, you just go and change. But so the reason I say that is software craftsmanship as a mindset, we are always in the pursuit of trying to do things the best we can. And for that, we cannot be religious about certain technologies or practices or methodologies. And even test-driven development, and I'm trying to be careful for you all not to misunderstand what I'm trying to say. This is not a criticism to certain methodologies and practices that we like. For example, we are very we like the extreme programming practices, but I think that the mindset should not make us to stop there or to be religious about them and thinking that that's the last thing. So this is it. We discovered everything. So now we have a set of practices and that is it. So in 20 years time, you're going to be coding exactly the same way. So that's against the mindset of always doing things better. So trying to strive to discover new things, to experiment, to see if we can push the boundaries is part of the movement. So that's why we need to detach. The mindset remains. Practices, I always say that good practices are only good until we find better ones to replace them, right? So, and that is for me is the part of the mindset. So, and then there is another important bit that you mentioned, Jose. The craftsmanship always tries to, at a given point in time, to say like, what are the most good practices that we all consider good practices that are worth sharing within the community and stuff. And so certain practices, they took a lot of attention, right? Test-driven development, pair programming, all the XP practices mainly, because that's where we were coming from as in terms of history. But many other things, domain-driven design and continuous integration and automation of pipelines, many other things, like they are also forming that foundation of what good software looks like. So the craftsmanship communities, for me, in my view, we should always be looking at like, what is the bare minimum we should know as techniques and make sure that everyone understands those techniques. And then we evolve and we keep pushing the boundary. But those practices are not the most, for example, that is the ones that we all need to master, and that are the ones that we are pushing the boundaries. Right. So, and that's for me is the mindset. Never be attached to anyone, not even test-driven development. We should not, as a community, we should not consider anything untouchable or anything permanent. No technique.
Marbesi asked that related question, right? Why do you think that craftsmanship is highly related to coding practices like TDD or clean code and not with other practices, as you already mentioned? And as you said, we do need to draw a line between what is mindset and of course, like things like test-driven development, they are XP practices. And XP, by the way, one thing I would like to say is that XP is very holistic. We talk about TDD and pair programming and so on, and we think that's all XP. Actually, it has values, it has principles, and it's a very well thought out, let's say, bunch of ideas that were applied and then kind of consolidated, and a lot of them are still very, very relevant. But it is XP and the TDD is XP and so on. So the question around why is craftsmanship highly related to coding practices, and I mean, I can attempt to describe it. I think even in our communities and so on, when we first, a lot of the even in software development, the majority of the people, the role that is the most numerous is the developer role, right? And often what happened is that even the software craftsmanship community, the developer role was the heaviest role in there, right? And developers like to do certain things, and especially honing your skill aligns very well with software craftsmanship, right? Well, it is a part of the software craftsmanship philosophy. You should always be working on honing your skills, your knowledge, and all those kind of things. So honing the skill part is then the ideas of katas, which is small exercises that you do over and over again, in borrowed from obviously martial arts, but maybe other things, I wouldn't know, but to kind of do over and over again to learn a particular skill, things like test-driven development. So that kind of then moved into this thing, honing a skill, honing the skill to code. We like to test drive, so using test-driven development to hone your skill to code and to design and so on. So that's why often you ended up doing a lot of sessions, a lot of even repetitions, because it is a skill. Coding is a skill, and in a way became a bit more prominent in communities and so on. That kind of session, that kind of practice became a bit more prominent. But that doesn't mean, as you said, That doesn't mean test-driven development is software craftsmanship. There is a path, and it's part of honing the skill and so on, and how it led to it. But there are many other aspects, and even non-coding disciplines within the building of making of software are considered craftsmanship. Or, if you take that craftsmanship mindset, you can apply that anywhere, and that's what we try to apply within our own company as well.
Yeah, and there was no. So go on, Jose. You wanted to say something?
No, I want, if I'm going to go in maybe in a different direction now. So if you wanted to say something on Mash's thing,
I just wanted to complement that idea, because like I was recently in Milan and I was speaking to the community there as well, and a few people were questioning me, asking me questions like if I think that, for example, mob programming is a better technique than pair programming, or if we should, what kind of testing styles we should use, and stuff like that. And so basically, they were asking me about a bunch of practices and my views on them. Yeah. And my question back to them was, well, my answer will vary according to the problem that you're trying to solve.
what were you trying to do?
Exactly.
That's what I was thinking. What were you trying to do? Maybe that's not the right
Exactly.
tool for
So
it. Maybe
then
it
I
is.
felt like I cannot just say that mob programming is better than pair programming if I don't know what you're trying to achieve with that. And this is exactly what I was trying to say about the difference between the mindset and a technical practice. Right, the technical practice is there to solve a few problems. Like you have a problem, so like maybe I should use those practices to solve that. The mindset is like, what kind of problems do I have, and what are the different ways that I can solve that? What would be what I think would be the best one? And this is aligned to what David Farley was talking about, what he calls it engineering in a way, right? So so for me, this is why it's so important that we distinguish the craftsmanship mindset from technical practices. Technical practices are tools. Right, so they are just tools that we know. There are ways of working that we learn, we master, so that we apply in the right context. But like I personally, for example, I would use mob programming for very, very specific things, the same way that I use pairing. Like certain practices, I need to have a very specific reason to use them. Otherwise, I wouldn't. But that is for me the mindset with everything.
Right. Yeah. Same with test-driven development as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Not everything needs to be test-driven.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, Jose, you said that you would.
Yeah, one thing that I was.
Are you starting a new
before.
thread?
No. It's more like, because the question was, why is it why is it always then associated with writing code and so on, and I think there's an aspect to that, which is, the industry itself is very fragmented. I think part of that is, economies of scale and, the whole Taylorism and trying to, mass produce software and all that stuff, where you have very specialized roles, or in order to achieve that economy, you have very specialized roles. So that in itself starts creating silos. Yeah, call it silos of knowledge, of responsibilities, or whatever, right? And precisely what craftsmanship is doing is it's trying to glue all of that together, right? Like find that common denominator that people can. But the thing is, as you start splitting things up and creating that fragmentation, you're also fragmenting, I think, the identity, or the things that people associate their identities with, right? I am a developer. I am a product owner. I am a product manager, or a QA, or whatever, right? And that fragmentation is really hard to break at the identity level, unless you have either a common goal or a common enemy. Yeah, so you need something that will bring
That
people's
unites everything.
identity together, right? And unite them, and right. And that, I think, is as a movement in general, it's kind of missing at the moment, in my opinion.
You're missing like from the craftsmanship community, or from or things that involve all those different roles.
as, let's say, as something that is there independently of what identity you chose to
Oh.
apply. You know what I mean? Like something that you can hang on to, right? And kind of use that to bring everyone together. Yeah.
And
So
I think
this
it's a
idea.
very good point, because ultimately, Sandro, I've had this conversation with you before. Like, for example, I have a problem with people calling themselves software craftspeople and being developer. Right? To me, that's exactly what I am speaking about. Because to me, software craftsmanship is around the whole aspect of making software. So anybody involved in the making of the software is part of the software craftsmanship, and call themselves a software craftsperson, whether they call themselves a UX craftsperson or you know, but in a way, it brings things. There is an opportunity there to bring things together, in my view, because you can have a UX
Mhm.
craftsperson, you can have a developer craftsperson, you can have a BA craftsperson or analyst crafts. So these things, I know, like sometimes it's a bit awkward in the way that you say it, but the identity of a craftsperson can be shared across all the roles of a software development team.
So here's the thing, right? So this is for me is a very complicated topic, right? Because I have conflicting opinions about that myself. Yeah. So one opinion that I have that is very strong is internally what I mean, right? So within myself, like things that are quite strong. If I'm referring to myself, I should call myself whatever I want. That is already a very strong thing that I have. I don't want anyone to say what I should or not call myself,
Yeah.
or right. So this is an important thing for me. Um, but at the same time, I don't want to also certain groups. They have an association already, a historical association, and you, for example, I don't like to call myself an agilist. I don't know if we use that term in Portuguese. I don't know if that translates to English, but in the agile community, like I know that in the Portuguese, the Brazilian community, for example, some people call themselves uh, agilist. Does it translate, Jose? I don't know exactly how do you
Un agilista. Yeah.
agilista.
I've heard the term. Yes.
Yeah. So for example, there are some people like, yeah. So for example, I could potentially, given the background, because I like the agile mindset, I could call myself that, for example, but I wouldn't. And because I don't think that I should try to stretch that metaphor to be beyond than what it was originally created, because there is a group identity, and I believe that any individual can have, and we discussed that multiple times within Codurance, that we all have multiple group identities, right? So we have an identity that is related to directly to a hobby or the core activity that we do in our profession. So being a developer or being a software craftsperson, right? So in my case, if I'm referring to myself, I would say I'm a software craftsman. But like as a software craftsperson, like I said, like I'm saying that I'm similar to certain types of people. But I'm also part of a specific project. I'm also London based, so I'm also part of the London office. So there is an identity where Jose is in the Barcelona office, or we are in the UK, in Spain. So we can at the same time belong to multiple group identities without uh, without conflicts. So then, because of that, I'm not sure if it would work. Just try to take something that was a developers movement that came from software developers squarely and try to stretch. It's not that no one is welcome, but it's not what I'm saying, but it seems forced.
But the way I see it is that it can evolve, right?
Sure,
It's,
sure.
just like what gave the software developer the right to take on the craftsperson or their work as craft, and not the other professions, right? So they can they can also, so the software craftsmanship, for example, the idea of building software, right? It can evolve to take on other roles. It's not
Sure.
stretching it, it's just evolving it. The reason I say this is because the mind, it, what we are talking about, and we said for quite a while, it's about the mindset.
Yeah.
It's not about the coding, it's about finding the right kind of trade-offs. And that mindset then, as a developer, applies to a bunch of practices that we treat as the minimum, and then that raises the bar. The same mindset as a framework can apply to a product manager's practices, and so on, and raise the bar along with them, because the mindset is separated from
Mhm.
from the actual practices and so on. So I feel that there is a big opportunity to come to use the same mindset and combine the different roles within the team and give them that one of course, I totally agree with you that there are many different identities that one can have, but an important identity is the grouping that is the team.
Yeah. Yeah. So I understand, and it's just like, for example, it is like software engineering, right? So it is a label as well. The software developers is a label. And software craftsmanship is no different from when you say I'm a software developer, a software engineer, or a software cross person. Yeah. We it was not the software craftsmanship movement that appropriated the title of the software word to refer to the developers. This was already coming in our industry. We already used software developers and software engineers. We use programmers as well, right? Or even developers without the software preceding that. But that was have always been associated to people that actually wrote software. So craftsmanship is just like coming. Oh
So
yes,
I'm not referring to
fun.
the
Yes,
software
totally.
craftsperson, but I actually more about the
A software
craftsperson part.
professional.
Yeah, the craftsperson part. So like
So
before, for example, in our company, we used to have right now at the moment we mention craftspeople and then we mean developers, right?
yes,
But actually, uh, we should mean developers if we say software craftspeople.
yeah.
But there are UX craftspeople, there are analyst craftspeople, there are, they can all embody that same mindset,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
what.
no, I agree, because we would like there is two sides to this, right? So the sentiment, and this is like we are now lively exposing into a lot of internal discussions that we have about those topics that I find fascinating. But we want so we want the craftsmanship mindset, as Mesh is saying, to be across everything, right? So, and this is why, for example, this is aligned to what I was saying before, to disassociate, at least not have such a strong association between craftsmanship and certain technical practice like test-driven development or XP, right? So because then you have a more pure mindset that is in terms of like, what is the best that I can do? How can I be a great professional, right? What are the best I can do within the context that I have, right? So how can I create a community of professionals? How can I help to evolve our industry? How can I satisfy my clients with a productive partnership, right? So all of those are all uh, things that are part of the software craftsmanship movement, and that are applicable to, I would even stretch way beyond the software professionals, not only the non-developers. I would go even beyond, right?
Yeah.
So in this side, I agree that the craftsmanship mindset should be applied. How make it natural? For example, if I was like, if I had an identity like a product owner, or an agile delivery manager, or a product manager, or any non-developer role, or a business analyst, or a UX, how natural that would sound to me to call myself a software craftsperson, I'm not quite sure.
We had some
It's
people, in
like
fact, I've been speaking to some product managers past few days, and they love the idea of their discipline as a craft. UX is right for it. There's quite a
Mhm.
lot. Delivery manager, maybe we may have to stretch a bit, but again, but sorry, coming back to, there's a really cool question from, I think it's Erin. Sorry if I completely butchered your name. Um, do you impose craftsmanship mindset on all of your team members? How do you work with people that don't have that mindset? Now, this is a really good question. Like, first of all, you don't impose a mindset on people. Like, again, this is not a cult, right? And and then it's a really good question. I'm sorry, I'm being flippant, but the question is really good. How do you work with people that don't have that mindset? Like another a way of asking. So what we mean by mindset is like things like professionalism. They are values, certain kind of values, right? Professionalism, respect. So I will rephrase that question. How do you work with people that don't have respect? Or how do you work with people that are not professional? Right? Now, suddenly, the question becomes a little more easier to answer, because how do you work people that are not professional? Well, first of all, how do you deem them to be unprofessional? And then there is the whole aspect of like, how do you help them understand if they really are, and the culture within the team and all those aspects. So it's not that you are preaching a certain kind of mindset. These are basic values that you prescribe to as a team, and they can be different, but your values may have slightly different priority. Doesn't mean that you're not part of the craftsmanship mindset or whatever. And so that's my answer to that question, is that you don't impose a mindset, and then there are a certain set of agreed values within your team. And when people exhibit behaviors that don't align with those values, then there might be many reasons. Might be education, might be a perspective. Try to understand, respect, and help, and see where they are coming from. And when someone truly is being difficult or just not helpful, then they don't belong there.
There is an element that first there is a recruitment process, right? So I was having this exchange on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. Of course, that we don't want to work with clones, right? So everyone is exactly the same. But we certainly want to work with like-minded people. So there is a set of basic principles. I'll call it almost like a social foundation, right? So that needs to exist in order that we can have a healthy relationship at work, similar to society, right? So so in order for us to have a good working relationship, we need to set some criteria of what we expect from people, the attitude that they have, the way that we communicate, and so on. So we try the best we can to use our selection process to try to understand that. Of course, that because we are talking about human behavior, it's almost impossible to have a recruitment process that will filter out everyone. Like so, but we at least the ones that really don't subscribe. For example, if someone really don't subscribe to the software craftsmanship mindset, they don't value certain technical practices or ways of working, they probably will not even apply to a company like ours, right? They will look at some of the things that we talk about online or our website and say, look, this company is not for me because I don't like that kind of stuff. And that is the same for a company like ours. That would not work. And then, but I'm talking about extremes. When in the day-to-day, not everyone is the same. People have different ideas. And one thing that we try to the best of our abilities to do is that, as Mesh said, you don't impose a mindset, but you need to be an example of it, right? So for example, if you want to talk about certain things, about professionalism or a mindset, a way that you see the world, you need to live by those things that you preach. So you need to start from you, like being an example. And then as more and more people have that example, it becomes a bit easier for a new person to behave like the rest of the group. And when they don't, we have conversations about our expectations, right? So, and sometimes that goes well, and sometimes it doesn't.
Totally.
My answer to that question was going to be a lot simpler. Yeah, how do you work with people you don't? That's
that,
it. You know what I
that
mean? Like it's
summarizes what we were trying to explain in
no,
like beating around the bushes, right?
no, but it's more like because I initially took the question as is what do we do, right? Like what we do is we work with people who we don't have to convince them that that's the way to work, right? Like or those are the values that they know. These are people who are motivated to improve their skill set, their craft, continue development as a profession. They're good people. They value the community aspect, like all of those things as things that we look for in the people that we hire. Right, that's part of our selection. In fact, I would go as far as saying that the practices, they're important, but they're not the most important thing. For sure, the practices I can teach. You know what I mean? The other stuff, if there's misalignment there, we have a problem, right? And not an easy to solve one. Yeah. So that's on the internal point of view. Like when you deal then with the rest, is the same. It's to some extent it is the same. You are going to be doing the most you can know when there is a conflict to bridge that gap and to help people, understand and see points of view and all that. But that is part of being a good professional. Yeah. But when those clash in values are so big that there's no way you can fill the gap, no matter how much professionalism you pour into it, we just don't work with those companies because we know we're not going to be able to deliver the value that we want to deliver because of that clash. So that is also an aspect of the thing, right? Like you're not going around trying to convince everyone, no, that's the right way to do things. No.
So before Jose starts on a completely new topic at this time, as Emmanuel was saying, there are two topics in there that I think that might deserve a much longer episode. I one is from SP. I don't know what the name says, but the so he mentions he or she. I don't know. But if you get an opinion that someone does not belong to a team, how to state that without damage him, yourself, team, without causing trouble to yourself, him, so difficult. And then there is a similar comment around the same lines. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name properly. Erins, you are from the Turkish craftsmanship, Turkish Java community, if I'm not wrong. I think we met before. I always trying to propose this mindset for every team member, not for them. I mostly do this for myself. 80% developers that I work with write code for machine and not for other developers. So there is an element on those two comments, if you like, that is when we are working with team members that may not fit that foundational how can I say social agreements, or so how to deal with that, because like those things are difficult, right? So if you are in a position of power, you might deal with that a bit easier. But if you are talking about a colleague, this is much harder to deal with, right? Or in environments that are more political or has some implications. So this may be like to be fair to both of you, I'm not sure, given where we are with an hour and 8 right now, I'm not sure you can address in depth your things. But what I could propose is that this sounds a very good fireside chat for us to have.
We did have one on difficult conversations.
We did have one on difficult conversations, but we can make this one a bit more specific about team dynamics.
Yeah, certainly.
And expectations and hiring and dealing with those agreements. Like what kind of agreements maybe we could have as a team, and what do we do when people are not compliant to those agreements, or even how to reach those agreements.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we need to wrap up. I think we are way past the time. So Mash, Jose, any final thoughts on this topic?
I can go with mine. Like the title is software engineering and craftsmanship, and what the fuss. And all those people that try to create these kind of dichotomies, it's engineering, it's craftsmanship, it's gardening, it's, whatever else, all I have to say to you is live and let live, man. It's not that important. Just be a good professional, try to do the job well, learn from everybody. Yeah.
Cool. Jose?
It's not a cult. No. It's again, it's a bit of a philosophy, no? So you decide which parts you want to take from that, and I think if it makes your life better, that's great. If it doesn't, then you don't have to subscribe to it. So that's the thing. But try to understand the whole thing, no, before you make any evaluations. Let's say, no, because a lot of the times people tend to jump the gun on that, right, and just judge without really understanding what they're judging. That's all.
Yeah, and from my side is very similar. Like, try to avoid those false dichotomies. Quite often, like, try to get to the bottom of, like, if you are caught in the middle of a discussion like that, a good first step is to ask the person to define those terms. That's normally what I like doing. So every time someone is trying to propose a dichotomy, the first thing is, and if I see there is a false dichotomy, I will ask for a definition. Like, how do you define this? Because maybe sometimes those discussions, they go so crazy just because people have a different definition of one of those terms. But as soon as you ask them to define, you start leveling it's easier to get to reach a common understanding, a common ground, because now you are forgetting about the terminology but focusing more on what they are trying to say. But yeah, like mentioned, Jose said, like, like, most of the times those discussions are not important. You just need to, I think that the most sensible people, when they sit down together and we ask them, okay, but what do you mean by this, and what would you expect, how would you expect people to behave, or you will see that most people, there's always the exceptional cases in the different extremes, but most people would normally reach an agreement quite easily. It's just the terminology that they might have different views of what they mean. Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone. It was quite cool to see how many people live contributing on the chat. So if you're new, like, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. It helps to promote those videos to more and more people as well. It's quite cool for us as well to see more and more people engaging with us and sending your comments. So I appreciate all of you spending the time and sharing your experiences and questions. I hope to see you again on Tuesday at the same time. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.